In the quiet village of Elarion, nestled amidst rolling hills and ancient forests, there stood a library whose walls whispered secrets of ages long past. Eldrin Thalorien, a scholar with an insatiable thirst for knowledge, spent countless hours poring over dusty tomes and faded scrolls. The air within the library was heavy with the scent of parchment and time, each book a portal to another era. Among the shelves, one volume caught his eye, a tome bound in leather darkened by centuries, its cover adorned with runes that seemed almost alive. He hesitated, but then reached out, feeling an inexplicable pull as if the book had been waiting just for him. Opening it cautiously, Eldrin found the pages filled with cryptic symbols and illustrations of celestial phenomena. As he traced the lines with his fingers, visions erupted in his mind. Vast plains bathed in golden light, towering spires reaching toward the heavens, and beings of radiant splendor walking among mortals. These were the Luminari, guardians of balance, who once ruled the world before vanishing into legend. Overwhelmed, yet captivated, Eldrin realized this was no ordinary text. It was a key to understanding something far greater than himself. Hidden within the book's final pages lay the Starshard, a fragment of pure starlight encased in crystalline form. The shard pulsed faintly, its glow casting shifting patterns on the walls around him. It felt warm against his palm, resonating with a power both foreign and familiar. Though untrained in magic, Eldrin sensed the artifact's connection to him, as though it had chosen him from countless others. Yet with this discovery came uneasy. A shadow lingered at the edge of his consciousness, whispering warnings of danger ahead. He closed the tome, clutching the shard tightly, knowing his life would never again be the same. The weight of destiny settled upon him like a mantle, urging him forward, even as doubt gnawed at his resolve. Leaving the library behind, Eldrin ventured beyond the confines of Elarion, seeking answers in the wider world. His first destination was Vaerith, a bustling market town where travelers from every corner of the realm gathered. There, amidst the clamor of merchants hawking their wares and the mingling of diverse tongues, he hoped to find someone wise enough to decipher the mysteries of the Starshard. Among the throngs, he encountered Kyleth, a robed figure exuding an aura of mystery. Their eyes met briefly, and Eldrin felt an instant rapport despite the stranger's enigmatic demeanor. Kyleth introduced himself as a wanderer, with knowledge gleaned from many lands. When Eldrin shared his tale, the man listened intently, nodding sagely. "What you hold," Kyleth said at last, his voice low and measured, "is but a piece of something far more profound." He explained that the Starshard was part of the celestial heart, an artifact capable of shaping reality itself. If united, it could restore harmony, unleash calamity. But the Shadowborn, remnants of those who once served the Luminari but turned to darkness, sought the shards for nefarious purposes. Eldrin's heart sank as the enormity of his task became clear. Still, he vowed to protect the shard, accepting Kyleth's offer to guide him. Together they departed Vaerith, heading eastward toward the Wildspire Mountains. The journey proved arduous, testing their endurance and resolve. Snowstorms battered them relentlessly, and jagged cliffs loomed ominously above. One night, as they camped beneath a canopy of stars, Eldrin voiced his fears. "Am I truly meant for this?" he asked, staring into the fire. Kyleth placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Destiny often chooses unlikely vessels," he replied. "But courage is not born, of certainty grows through trial." Their path grew perilous as they entered deeper into the mountains. Packs of wolves stalked them, their howls echoing through the frost-laden air. On one occasion, they were ambushed by Shadowborn minions-twisted creatures cloaked in black mist. Eldrin fought alongside Kyleth, wielding the shard as both weapon and shield. Its light banished the creatures, though not without cost. Exhausted but resolute, they pressed onward until they stumbled upon two strangers. Lyra, an elven archer with piercing green eyes, and Thorin, a burly human warrior bearing scars of countless battles. Both offered their aid, sensing the urgency of Eldrin's quest. As the group forged ahead, Eldrin began to unlock the shard's latent powers. Under Kaylee's tutelage, he learned to channel its energy, summoning bursts of light to illuminate dark caverns or create barriers against adversaries. Each success bolstered his confidence, yet also deepened his awareness of the responsibility resting upon him. In quieter moments, he confided in Lyra, finding solace in her calm wisdom, while Thorin's gruff humor provided much-needed levity. Together, they formed a bond forged in adversity, united by a common purpose. At last, they arrived at Umbrael, a city shrouded in perpetual gloom. Once a thriving metropolis, it now lay abandoned, save for the malevolent spirits that haunted its ruins. The streets were silent except for the mournful cries of phantom winds, and the buildings crumbled under the weight of despair. Within the heart of the city stood the Obsidian Tower, where the second shard awaited, but so too did the corrupted spirit of King Malakar, who had succumbed to madness centuries ago. Eldrin steeled himself for what lay ahead, knowing the trials would push him to his limits. Ascending the tower, they faced numerous traps and illusions designed to test their resolve. At the summit, the spirit of Malakar materialized, his form wreathed in shadowy tendrils. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the tower, he launched an assault meant to break their spirits. Eldrin countered with the Starshard's radiance, illuminating the chamber and dispelling some of the darkness. Yet the king's wrath was formidable, forcing the companions to fight valiantly. Amidst the chaos, Eldrin confronted a vision of his own failures, his doubts magnified tenfold. Summoning all his strength, he rejected the whispers of self-doubt, emerging victorious though shaken. With the second shard secured, the group regrouped, their bond strengthened by shared hardship. They traveled next to Arator, a fortress city brimming with activity as its people prepared for war. Factions vied for dominance, mistrust dividing them even as the Shadowborn threat loomed ever closer. Eldrin, bearing the combined power of the shards, emerged as a unifying force. Through eloquent speeches and demonstrations of the shard's potential, he inspired hope among the disparate groups. Diplomacy gave way to action when the Shadowborn launched a surprise attack, breaching the city's defenses. The ensuing battle was fierce, arrows flying like rain and blades clashing in rhythmic fury. Eldrin stood firm, rallying his allies and turning the tide with the shard's brilliance. Though victorious, the cost was high. Many fell defending the city, their sacrifices etched into Eldrin's memory. Grief tempered his resolve, fueling his determination to see the mission through. The final phase of their journey led them to the Celestial Spire, a structure said to bridge the mortal realm with the divine. Ascending its spiraling heights, they encountered the leader of the Shadowborn, a being of immense power, its form a swirling vortex of darkness. The climactic confrontation tested every ounce of Eldrin's strength, both physical and mental. Drawing upon the full might of the reunited celestial heart, he unleashed a torrent of light that shattered the enemy, sealing away the Shadowborn forever. Exhausted but triumphant, Eldrin gazed out over the land below, now bathed in peace. Returning home, he carried with him not only the memories of his journey, but also the lessons learned along the way. No longer merely a scholar, he had become a beacon of hope, proof that even the humblest soul could achieve greatness when guided by purpose and courage. And so, the tale of Eldrin Thalorien passed into legend, inspiring generations to come. The road to Veyrit wound through verdant valleys and dense woodlands, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. Eldrin walked beside Caleth, his cloak billowing in the gentle breeze. The Starshard nestled safely within its folds. "What can you tell me of the Shadowborn?" he asked, curiosity mingling with apprehension. Kaeli's gaze drifted skyward, as though searching for words among the clouds. "They were once servants of the Luminari," he began, his voice carrying the weight of ancient lore. "But pride and ambition twisted their hearts, turning them against their creators. As they journeyed, the landscape shifted from rolling hills to bustling towns, each place teeming with life and color. Merchants hawked their wares, children laughed in the streets, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air. Yet beneath this vibrant surface, Eldrin sensed an undercurrent of unease, a shadow lurking at the edges of every smile. The Shadowborn feed on fear, Kaelith explained, reading Eldrin's thoughts. Their presence corrupts all it touches, sowing discord and despair. In Verith, the market square was alive with activity, a cacophony of voices rising above the clamor of hooves and wagon wheels. Stalls overflowed with exotic goods, silks shimmering like liquid gold, spices that perfumed the air, and weapons crafted with meticulous precision. Amidst the throng, Kaelith led Eldrin to a secluded corner where an elderly sage sat cross-legged upon a rug. The man's eyes gleamed with intelligence, his beard threaded with silver strands. "This is Master Daron," Kaelith said, bowing slightly. Few know more of the celestial heart than he. Daron welcomed them warmly, gesturing for them to sit. He listened intently as Eldrin recounted his tale, nodding occasionally. When the scholar fell silent, Daron stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The shards are pieces of a greater whole," he mused aloud. "Each one holds a fragment of the Luminari's essence. To reunite them is to summon power beyond mortal comprehension." His expression grew grave. "But beware, young one. Such power demands sacrifice, and not all sacrifices are equal." Night fell swiftly, stars pricking the velvet expanse above. Around a small fire, Eldrin pondered Daron's words, his mind heavy with questions. Kaelith joined him, offering a flask of warm cider. "Do you think we will succeed?" Eldrin asked, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames. Kaelith chuckled softly, the sound rich with experience. "Success depends less on strength than on perseverance. The path ahead will test us sorely, but remember this. Even the smallest light can dispel great darkness." With dawn came renewed purpose. They set forth from Verith, leaving behind the comforts of civilization for the untamed wilderness beyond. The Wildspire Mountains loomed ahead, their jagged peaks crowned with perpetual snow. As they approached, the temperature dropped sharply, biting winds slicing through their clothing. Each step forward required effort, the icy terrain treacherous underfoot. Yet neither faltered, driven by the knowledge that time was fleeting. On the third day, they encountered signs of the Shadowborn tracks etched into the frost, faint traces of dark energy lingering in the air. Tension coiled within Eldrin, his grip tightening on the shard. Kaelith placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Fear not," he murmured. "We face these trials together. Their bond deepened with each challenge overcome, forged in the crucible of shared adversity. And so, with courage bolstered by friendship, they pressed onward, toward the heart of the mountains, and whatever awaited them there. The Wildspire Mountains loomed before them, their peaks shrouded in swirling mists that whispered secrets of ancient times. Each step forward was a battle against the biting winds and treacherous terrain, yet Eldrin's resolve remained unshaken. The shard pulsed faintly against his chest, its warmth a comforting reminder of the task ahead. Kaelith moved with practiced ease, his boots crunching through the snow as he scanned their surroundings for danger. "Stay vigilant," he cautioned, his voice carrying over the howling wind. Shadows flitted at the edges of their vision, hinting at unseen forces lurking nearby. Their journey took them deeper into the heart of the range, where the air grew thinner and the cold more biting. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of crimson and gold, they spotted movement on the horizon, a group of figures emerging from the gloom. Lyra appeared first, her bow slung across her back, her sharp eyes assessing them warily. Behind her strode Thorin, his broad frame cloaked in furs, his sword gleaming dully in the fading light. "Who are you?" Lyra called, her voice steady despite the chill. Kaeli stepped forward, introducing himself and Eldrin, explaining their shared purpose. Suspicion melted into cautious acceptance as the two newcomers revealed their own stories of loss and defiance against the Shadowborn. Together, they forged a plan to navigate the most perilous stretches of the mountains. Lyra's keen senses proved invaluable in detecting hidden dangers, while Thorin's strength ensured they could overcome obstacles both natural and unnatural. One night, as they camped beneath a canopy of stars so bright they seemed almost tangible, Eldrin confided in Lyra about his fears. "Am I worthy of this burden?" he asked, staring into the fire's flickering flames. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. "Worthiness is not born of certainty," she replied, echoing Kaelith's earlier words. "It grows from the choices we make when faced with doubt." The trials intensified as they ventured higher. A sudden avalanche forced them to take refuge in a narrow cave, its walls lined with crystalline formations that glowed faintly in the dark. Within the cavern, Eldrin discovered an ancient inscription etched into the stone, a warning of sorts, speaking of those who sought the celestial heart without understanding its true nature. Kaelis translated the runes carefully, his brow furrowed in thought. "This artifact demands more than mere possession," he murmured. "It requires wisdom, humility, and sacrifice." Eldrin nodded solemnly, resolving to heed these lessons as they continued upward. Their path led them to a frozen lake, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the moonlight like a mirror. Beneath the ice, shadowy shapes writhed, drawn by the presence of the Starshard. Thorin hacked at the ice with his axe, creating a narrow passage for them to cross, while Lyra guarded their rear, arrows nocked and ready. As they reached the far shore, a pack of Shadowborn minions emerged from the shadows, their forms distorted by corruption. Eldrin raised the shard, its light blazing forth to drive back the creatures. For a moment he felt the full weight of its power coursing through him, a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. Exhaustion weighed heavily upon them as they finally reached the summit, a windswept plateau crowned with jagged spires of rock. There, amidst the desolation, lay another piece of the celestial heart, embedded within a pedestal of obsidian. Eldrin approached cautiously, the shard in his hand resonating with the fragment before him. As he touched it, visions flooded his mind, images of battles fought long ago, of heroes rising and falling, of worlds remade and undone. When the vision faded, he found himself kneeling, tears streaming down his face. Kaelith knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have taken another step toward your destiny," he said softly. With renewed determination, Eldrin rose, the second shard now safely secured. Night fell swiftly, the stars above casting their pale light upon the weary travelers. Around a small fire, they shared stories of their pasts, finding solace in each other's company. Thorin spoke of his homeland ravaged by war. Lyra recounted tales of her people's struggle for survival, and Kaelith offered fragments of knowledge gleaned from his travels. Eldrin listened intently, realizing that their bond transcended mere companionship. It was a fellowship forged in adversity, united by a common goal. As the embers dimmed, they prepared to descend the mountain, knowing that greater challenges awaited them below. Yet for now, they rested, their spirits buoyed by hope and camaraderie. With dawn came clarity. The road ahead would be fraught with peril, but together they had proven themselves capable of overcoming even the harshest trials. Descending the slopes, they left the wild spires behind, their steps lighter despite the burdens they carried. Umbria loomed on the horizon, its dark silhouette promising new mysteries and dangers. But Eldrin no longer walked alone. With Kylith, Lyra, and Thorin by his side, he faced the future with unwavering resolve. The celestial heart called to him, its promise of unity and restoration guiding his every step. And so, they pressed onward toward whatever fate awaited them in the forsaken city beyond. The approach to Umbrael was grim, the air heavy with an oppressive stillness that pressed upon their chests. Shadows clung to the ancient stones of the city, as though the very land itself recoiled from the darkness that had taken root there. The streets were silent, save for the faint rustle of leaves carried by a mournful wind. Eldrin's heart quickened as they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine alleys, each step bringing them closer to the obsidian tower at the city's heart. Kylith moved ahead, his staff tapping against the cobblestones, while Lyra and Thorin flanked Eldrin, their weapons drawn. At last, they reached the tower's base, its obsidian surface slick with condensation and age. The entrance yawned before them, a gaping maw filled with inky blackness. Within, the air grew colder, and whispers echoed through the corridor soft, insidious voices meant to sow doubt and fear. Eldrin gripped the shard tightly, its warmth a beacon against the encroaching gloom. "Stay close," Kylith warned, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The group proceeded cautiously, their footsteps muted by the thick silence. Traps lined the halls, cleverly concealed mechanisms designed to thwart intruders. One corridor ended abruptly in a pit filled with writhing tendrils of shadow, which lashed out hungrily when disturbed. Thorin hacked at them with his axe, severing the appendages even as new ones sprouted to replace them. Beyond this obstacle lay a chamber filled with illusions, where walls shifted and pathways twisted unpredictably. Lyra's keen eyes pierced through the deception, guiding them safely to the other side. Higher they climbed, the stairs spiraling ever upward until they reached the summit. There, bathed in a sickly green light, stood the corrupted spirit of King Malakar. His form shimmered between states of being, part man and part wraith, his once majestic robes tattered and stained with filth. "Fools!" he bellowed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "You dare disturb my eternal vigil!" The ground trembled beneath his wrath, and dark tendrils erupted from the floor, snaking toward the companions. Eldrin raised the Starshard, its light blazing forth to repel the shadows. Malakar retaliated with blasts of energy, forcing the group to scatter. Kylith chanted an incantation, weaving a protective barrier around them, while Thorin charged forward, striking at the spectral king with all his might. Lyra loosed arrows tipped with enchanted fire, her shots finding their mark but doing little to diminish Malakar's power. Eldrin felt the shard resonate within him, urging him to draw upon its full potential. Closing his eyes, he focused on the visions he had seen, the strength of the Luminari, the resilience of those who fought alongside him, and unleashed a wave of radiant energy. Malakar roared in defiance, his form flickering wildly as the light stripped away his corruption. But victory came at a cost. In the final moments of the battle, Eldrin was consumed by a vision, a harrowing glimpse of his own failures, his doubts magnified until they threatened to overwhelm him. He stumbled, the shard slipping from his grasp, its glow dimming momentarily. It was then that Lyra stepped forward, her voice cutting through the haze of despair. "You are not alone," she said firmly, her hand on his shoulder. Drawing strength from her words, Eldrin reclaimed the shard, its light burning brighter than ever. With a final cry, Malakar dissolved into nothingness, his essence absorbed into the shard. The chamber fell silent, the green light fading to reveal a second piece of the celestial heart embedded in the pedestal behind the throne. Eldrin approached it cautiously, feeling the resonance between the two fragments. As he touched the artifact, the shard pulsed with renewed vigor, its connection to him deepening further. Calith placed a hand on his shoulder, pride evident in his expression. "You have proven yourself worthy," he said simply. Exhausted but triumphant, they regrouped, taking stock of their injuries and replenishing their supplies. The bond between them had grown stronger through the ordeal, forged in the fires of adversity. They spoke little as they descended the tower, each lost in their thoughts. Outside, the skies above Umbrael began to clear, the perpetual gloom lifting as if the city itself breathed a sigh of relief. Yet none dared to celebrate prematurely. The road ahead would be longer and more perilous still. As night fell, they camped outside the city limits, the ruins of Umbrael casting long shadows across the landscape. Around a small fire, Eldrin examined the shard, marveling at the intricate patterns that now adorned its surface. Calith recounted tales of kings who had faced similar trials, their stories serving as both caution and inspiration. Lyra strung her bow, her movements deliberate and practiced, while Thorin sharpened his axe, humming a tune that carried the weight of countless battles. Together, they formed a fellowship unlike any other, united by purpose and tested by fate. Rest came fitfully, dreams mingling with fragments of prophecy. Eldrin saw glimpses of the celestial spire, its spires reaching impossibly high into the heavens. He felt the pull of destiny, a force greater than himself, yet intimately tied to his choices. When dawn broke, the group rose with renewed determination, their path set toward Arathor. Though the journey promised hardship, they walked together, their spirits buoyed by hope and resolve. For in the face of darkness, even the smallest light could shine brightly enough to guide the way. And so they pressed onward the shards of the celestial heart, calling them ever forward. The fortified city of Arathor sprawled before them, its walls crowned with watchtowers that glinted under the pale winter sun. Smoke rose from countless hearths, mingling with the icy air to form a haze that softened the edges of the skyline. Eldrin and his companions approached through the main gate, their arrival drawing curious glances from the guards stationed there. Word of their quest had preceded them, carried by messengers who had fled Umbrael ahead of the encroaching Shadowborn forces. The city bristled with activity, its streets bustling with soldiers preparing for war and civilians seeking refuge within its sturdy walls. Inside the gates, they were ushered to the great hall where Lord Valen, ruler of Arathor, awaited them. A man of middle years with piercing blue eyes and a silver-streaked beard, he exuded an air of authority tempered by wisdom. "You come bearing tidings of both hope and despair," he said after introductions were made, his voice carrying the weight of responsibility. Eldrin nodded solemnly, recounting their journey thus far and the growing threat posed by the Shadowborn. Valen listened intently, his expression shifting from concern to resolve as the tale unfolded. The hall buzzed with chatter afterward, factions gathering in corners to debate strategy. Some advocated caution, urging delay until reinforcements arrived. Others argued for immediate action, fearing the Shadowborn might strike without warning. Amidst the discord, Eldrin stood apart, the shards of the celestial heart pulsing faintly beneath his cloak. He felt the burden of leadership pressing upon him, yet also the support of his companions. Kailis whispered words of encouragement, while Lyra and Thorin exchanged determined glances, ready to follow wherever he led. That evening, Eldrin addressed the assembled leaders, his voice steady despite the doubts that lingered in his mind. He spoke of unity, of setting aside old rivalries to face a common enemy. Drawing the shard from his cloak, he demonstrated its power, banishing the shadows that had crept into the corners of the hall. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of awe and disbelief. One by one, the factions pledged their allegiance, inspired by Eldrin's courage and the promise of restoration the Shard represented. Preparations began in earnest the following day. Weapons were sharpened, armor polished, and supplies stockpiled. Scouts ventured beyond the city walls to gather intelligence on the Shadowborn's movements, returning with grim reports of vast armies massing in the surrounding lands. Tensions ran high, but Eldrin worked tirelessly to bolster morale, speaking to soldiers and citizens alike, reminding them of the strength found in unity. Kyleth assisted where he could, sharing tales of past victories to inspire hope, while Lyra trained archers in advanced techniques, her skill unmatched. On the fifth night, disaster struck. A massive force of Shadowborn breached the outer defenses, their dark banners snapping in the wind as they surged toward the gates. Alarms blared, waking the entire city, and defenders rushed to their posts. Eldrin joined the fight atop the walls, the shard blazing brightly in his hand. Its light drove back the creatures, forcing them to retreat into the shadows, but the cost was steep. Many brave souls fell that night, their sacrifices etched forever into the collective memory of those who survived. In the aftermath, grief hung heavy over the city. Funerals were held and memorials erected, but there was no time for prolonged mourning. The Shadowborn would return, perhaps sooner than expected, and preparations intensified. Eldrin sought solace in quiet moments, often retreating to the library to study ancient texts that might reveal further secrets of the celestial heart. Kyleth accompanied him, offering insights gleaned from decades of experience. Together, they uncovered references to rituals that could enhance the Shard's power, though the methods required were fraught with risk. As days turned into weeks, the city grew increasingly tense. Supplies dwindled, and the strain of constant vigilance began to show on everyone's faces. Yet amidst the turmoil, bonds strengthened. Eldrin found himself leaning more heavily on his companions, their camaraderie a source of strength when all else seemed uncertain. Lyra's calm demeanor provided comfort during anxious nights, while Thorin's humor offered brief respites from the unrelenting pressure. Even Valen, initially distant, came to regard Eldrin as a trusted ally, consulting him frequently on matters of state. One morning, a scout returned with urgent news. The Shadowborn army was advancing once more, this time with overwhelming numbers. Panic threatened to take hold, but Eldrin called an emergency council, his presence steadying the room. "We cannot meet them head-on," he declared, his voice firm. "But we can outmaneuver them, striking at their weakest points." A plan took shape, involving a series of coordinated attacks designed to disrupt the enemy's formation and buy precious time. Volunteers stepped forward eagerly, their trust in Eldrin unwavering. The battle raged throughout the day, arrows filling the sky like rain and blades clashing in rhythmic fury. Eldrin fought alongside his companions, the Shard's light guiding their efforts. At one point, he faced a powerful Shadowborn commander, a towering figure wreathed in darkness. Summoning every ounce of strength, he unleashed a burst of energy that shattered the creature's defenses, sending it recoiling into the fray. Victory, though costly, was theirs, and the remaining forces withdrew, leaving behind a battlefield strewn with fallen warriors. Exhausted but resolute, the survivors regrouped within the city walls. Eldrin knew this reprieve would be short-lived, that the true test lay ahead. Still, for now, they celebrated their triumph, honoring the dead and reaffirming their commitment to the cause. Around a roaring fire in the courtyard, stories were told and laughter shared, a fragile reminder of life's enduring beauty. As midnight approached, Eldrin gazed up at the stars, their light undimmed by the horrors below. Somewhere beyond, the celestial spire awaited, its spires reaching toward the heavens, calling him ever closer to his ultimate destiny. The celestial spire loomed ahead, its crystalline towers piercing the heavens like fingers of light. Eldrin and his companions approached cautiously, their footsteps echoing against the polished marble path that led to its base. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy, each breath carrying the faint scent of ozone and starlight. Calith moved ahead, his staff glowing softly as he scanned the surroundings for signs of danger. "This place is ancient," he murmured, his voice reverberating through the stillness. "Older than memory itself." At the entrance, a massive door stood ajar, its surface etched with intricate runes that pulsed faintly with power. Eldrin hesitated before stepping inside, the shard in his hand resonating with the structure's essence. Beyond lay a vast chamber bathed in silvery light, its walls adorned with frescoes depicting the Luminari in their glory. At the far end, suspended in midair, was the final piece of the celestial heart, its form radiant and serene. A figure cloaked in shadows awaited them there, its presence heavy with malice. "The journey ends here," the Shadowborn leader intoned, its voice a cacophony of whispers. It stepped forward, revealing a visage twisted by hatred and corruption. "You dare challenge me, bearer of the shards?" Eldrin tightened his grip on the artifact, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. "I do not see conflict," he replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "But I will not let you misuse this power." The battle commenced swiftly, the chamber erupting into chaos. Thorin charged forward, his axe cleaving through the darkness with practiced precision. Lyra loosed arrows imbued with the shard's light, each shot striking true. Kylith wove spells of protection, shielding them from the Shadowborn's assaults. Eldrin focused on the central figure, channeling the combined strength of the shards. Waves of radiant energy surged forth, illuminating the chamber and driving back the encroaching shadows. Yet the foe proved formidable, its attacks growing more desperate as it sensed defeat looming. Shadows coalesced around it, forming constructs that lunged at the companions with deadly intent. Eldrin countered with bursts of light, his movements fluid and precise. He felt the shard resonate deeply within him, its power amplifying his own resolve. With a final cry, he unleashed a torrent of energy, engulfing the Shadowborn leader in blinding radiance. The creature screamed, its form dissolving into nothingness as the last vestiges of corruption were purged. Silence fell over the chamber, the only sound, the gentle hum of the reunited celestial heart. Eldrin approached the artifact, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch it. The moment of contact was profound, a surge of knowledge and emotion flooding his mind. Visions of the past and future intertwined, showing him the delicate balance between light and darkness. He understood then that true power lay not in domination, but in harmony, in guiding others toward hope rather than despair. As they descended from the spire, the land below seemed transformed. Shadows lifted, revealing fields lush with green and skies painted in hues of gold and blue. Eldrin gazed upon the world with newfound clarity, his burden lighter, yet no less significant. Kylith placed a hand on his shoulder, pride evident in his expression. "You have fulfilled your destiny," he said simply. "Now begins the next chapter." Together, they walked toward the horizon, their steps steady and purposeful. Lyra spoke of returning to her people, sharing the lessons learned during their quest. Thorin vowed to rebuild his homeland, ensuring future generations would never face such darkness again. Kylith promised to continue wandering, spreading tales of their triumphs to inspire others. Eldrin listened, his heart swelling with gratitude for their friendship and sacrifice. Night fell swiftly, stars pricking the velvet expanse above. Around a small fire, they shared stories of what lay ahead, their voices mingling with the rustle of leaves and distant winds. Eldrin held the shard close, feeling its warmth and knowing its power would guide him always. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, he faced it with unwavering resolve, guided by the bonds forged in adversity and the enduring light of hope. And so, under the watchful gaze of the heavens, they prepared to part ways, each destined for new adventures, their hearts forever united by the journey they had shared.